And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 59th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where our show has one main goal: to give you our perspective of IU sports from the point of view as a student or young adult. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, October 23rd, where I am your host, Noah Freeman, and I'm with my usual co-host, Matthew Lukens.
What's up?
Normally, we'll be going live every Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m., but if you miss us live, you can subscribe to various networks. You can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at The Hoosier Sound and subscribe. All of the information is in our website, thehoosiersound.com. All right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. But first, as always, Matt, what is your memorable monologue for this week in IU sports?
So originally I was going to do something football related, but as of about 25 minutes ago, the Indiana basketball Twitter account tweeted out a picture of Romeo in the gold jersey. So it is official. There is a competition between him and Jawan about who's going to win the gold jersey each week in practice. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll give you a little bit of insight into it. So Archie Miller awards a gold jersey to the person with the most practice points. So they get points for the most points, rebounds, assists, trying the hardest in practice. And he awards points for, certain things and beating your personal best and weights and stuff like that. So the person with the most points at the end of the week wins the gold jersey. The first gold jersey was awarded to Juwan Morgan. And now this past week's gold jersey has now been awarded to Romeo Langford. Juwan Morgan said that Romeo Langford didn't talk to him for about a week in the locker room. In between, he was so upset that he didn't win the first one. So I think there's a good rivalry brewing between the two of them. It's obviously a friendly rivalry.
A healthy one, too.
And a healthy one, too. It's always good when your two best players are competing against each other in practice to outdo each other. It only makes them better. It only makes the team better, too, because I'm sure that Justin Smith and Devontae Green and even Zach McRoberts want that gold jersey as well. So it just pushes everybody to compete more in practice, and more competition in practice means that they're going to be better and more cohesive during the game. And I'm really excited for basketball to start, and it's coming up in about 12, 13, 14 days. So
yeah. Especially for the official one. And then we got very, very soon for our scrimmage that tickets went on sale for students, by the way, today. If you didn't see that, Indiana, also the basketball Twitter page tweeted out that you can buy tickets for that. But I was going to talk about, or at least have Matt start to talk about, yesterday, a really cool thing came out where students can go to a basketball practice next week. So Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and what that might entail for next week for any students that are currently listening?
So, 5:00 next Tuesday, the men's basketball team's opening up a practice. So you can go and sit in Assembly Hall and watch the team practice, and there'll be free pizza. Sadly, I will not be able to go because, of course, I have an exam at 5:45. So I would be going if it wasn't for my exam, but my sports law class, I have to talk about Title IX and a bunch of other things in the First Amendment. So catch me being in an exam during that time. Hopefully we will find somebody else that can go and cover it for us. I'm sure there will be some willing volunteers of people who will be able to go and be like, hey, I can talk about it. But yeah, so I'm really excited to see what comes out of that as well.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool idea for Archie, just to, why not get the students even more excited for this season? Because if you're going to want at least one section to be always packed, it's definitely going to be the students. But let's get into, for better or for worse, let's get into some IU football talk, because this is a pivotal week. We're right before the start of basketball season, and this could be either a positive turning point or a falling off the cliff week for Indiana basketball, almost literally, because we, due to very many recent circumstances, the football game this Friday is going to be something to look out for. But let's talk about, at least before we do that, we'll talk about the pass game on Saturday and what we can take away from this Penn State game, because normally, at least from first glance, is that Indiana usually loses to Penn State by a very wide margin. So at least that was not the case this past Saturday. But Matt, give us your first impressions on what you took away from this past weekend.
I thought when Michael Penix was in, our offense looked fantastic, and then he tore his ACL. So God hates IU football. I guess offense was pretty good. Stevie Scott got going a little bit. I thought we ran the ball extremely well.
Because he had chances to run the ball this time.
Yeah, well, yeah, we actually some balanced play calling for once. But we didn't take as many deep shots as I wish we had, but we were running the ball so well. I can't argue against that. I thought the defense played well as well. So our offense and defense played well, and we still lost. How did that happen, Noah? Well, our special teams, for lack of better words, crapped the bed and basically lost us the game. If it wasn't for our special teams, I think we can probably, take 14 points from Iowa off the board. I'm not even counting that 9-yard McSorley rushing touchdown against the defense, because it was a 95-yard kickoff return. And, putting the defense with a 5 yards of field against a running quarterback who can also throw the ball pretty decently is, almost a guaranteed touchdown. So I'm not counting that against them at all. And also just fumbles all over the place. Yeah. When our running back fumbled the ball once, and that's just a freshman mistake, and that just happens. That's going to happen. But on the kickoff, on the punt, Wop fumbling it is not Wop.
Jay-Sean.
I get those two mixed up every time. Jay-Sean fumbling it is unacceptable. And just, I don't know. The special teams were not good, and that's what cost us the game. 2 plays. And I feel like every time we talk about a close game against, a Michigan State, a Penn State, an Iowa, well, when we play Iowa close, it's like one side of the ball messes up. And to win a game, all 3 sides of the ball, special teams, offense and defense, need to be working. They need to be working together. And we had 2 of the 3 cylinders working on this game. And special teams was not. And we outgained Penn State. We outplayed Penn State. We outmatched Penn State. And we still lost because our special teams choked it away.
And I'd even argue more that 3 scores were really the special teams' fault, because the very first kickoff, the very first play of the game, they brought it down to opposing territory, to Indiana territory, to where Penn State didn't have much to go. Even though it was like 30 or 40 yards, it's still only 30 or 40 yards that they had to go. The defense was, with how explosive the Penn State offense can be, Penn State was probably going to score. So I'd even argue 21 points were given up due to the lack of Indiana special teams playing. And that basically would have been if, I don't think it would have been quite like this, but if it happened to be 21 points was due to the special teams fault, that's a 28-12 game. That's a very, very different game, or 28-11 game at 12. No, I was right. Yeah. 28-12 game. That's a very different game. So, but
so disappointing.
I'm going to go into the I agree, the special teams, and that would be the main focus point. But one of the overall, I guess compared to recently, the game was played mostly pretty well. There was just more than a few key mistakes that kind of came at the end of halves, especially the first half. The end of the first half really ticked me off. 4th and 1, you're going for it, okay, but to either call a pass play or check out of the pass play, Stevie has gotten you 1 yard basically every single time. Then After we missed that 4th-and-1 opportunity, at least the defense stopped Penn State from going down, so we got the ball back. But then, how do you not know how much time is left on the clock? Ramsey was the only one on the last play of that half that saw that there was no time, or at least had no urgency, or saw that Mike Majette didn't get out of bounds. Everyone was just sauntering back to the line of scrimmage, and one of your only jobs in a critical time situation is to know how much time is left, if the clock is running, where the first down marker is, how to get out of bounds. Even if getting out of bounds costs you a couple yards, at least you stop the clock and you save yourself multiple plays. It could have been as much as 20-17 IU winning at the half, with IU getting the ball back at the start of the second half. But that just basically the end of the first half just kind of summed up the rest of the game, where I was trying to get back in it, but they just kept making crucial mistakes. And you can't make crucial mistakes even to a mid-level opponent, let alone a top 20 opponent.
Yeah, we had him, and we had a chance too. I was really disappointed in the play calling in the fourth quarter when we got the onside kicks the last 2 minutes. I was really disappointed in that. I feel like we would have definitely benefited if we had Penix in instead of Ramsey, because of his ability to throw the ball down the field more. But yeah, no, just play calling all around in critical situations also let us down. I think I forgot that, but yeah, special teams, critical play calling, fumbles, but like, one was a freshman mistake. I'm not going to hold that against. I'm not going to hold that against him. So.
Yeah, and then the other part that I thought was really weird, at least we talked about you mentioned the offensive line had a pretty good game, and I agree, they had a really good game except for penalties.
Yes.
Whether a lot of those were warranted or not, there were 5 holding calls, and the confusing part, the head scratcher, was Wes Martin, your captain, had 3 out of the 5 holding calls, and whether or not there's no way 3 of them were bad calls, missed calls by the ref. So like Wes Martin, I don't know what he was doing during that game, but really 5 holding calls, I think as IU fans, as even Penn State fans, a couple of them were a little questionable, but still that's 50 yards of penalties right there just in holding calls. And a lot of those holdings really negated huge plays, especially one of the ones at the middle of the second quarter where it negated Penix's 15-yard run that was moving us down the field and everything. It was just very suspect and very weird.
Yes. Also, on a side note, Michael Penix needs to learn how to slide. That's it.
Well,
that's all he should work on this offseason.
If he would have had more than just 2 games and the last time he played was mid-September, maybe it'd be a little different.
Yep. But,
Yeah. And I think hopefully, I haven't heard this narrative yet, but people like, oh, if Penix would have been playing earlier, maybe he wouldn't have gotten injured. You don't know that. But and like maybe if he was playing, he wouldn't have been in that situation. You don't know that. It's just it was a sad situation that we're going to get into more later, because we had a couple questions on Twitter come in with that. So we'll dive into that a little deeper later. But just a really sad situation, especially for a guy that seemed like he was probably going to keep continuing to increase and maybe and definitely push the coaching staff to say, hey, don't redshirt me. I'm going to be able to help you right now. But let's get into we talked a little bit about the QBs. Honestly, there's not much to go off of besides diving into Penix's injury. He basically had a sign of life for the offense. There was a little more energy with it. Not that Ramsey, honestly, you look at Ramsey, he's not that bad. Like you can't say Ramsey is a bad QB, but you can't say he's a good QB either. He gets you down the field. He gets you really good completion rate percentages. He gets some yards. He gets a few touchdowns, but it's not like he's moving the ball incredibly well. It's just weird. And as most IU fans wish, we wish we could have seen Penix in just to even shake it up more. I don't necessarily think Ramsey would have gone away for the entire season, but it would have been a good shakeup.
Yeah, I thought Penix just played better. I just felt like he played better because I feel like the offense felt more vertical than horizontal. Whenever Ramsey's in, it just feels completely horizontal. So I don't know. Ramsey's not a bad quarterback, but he doesn't do any game-changing plays. And when you're trying to win games, you need game-changing plays.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Like I said, not a good quarterback, but not a bad quarterback. And I mean, as a mediocre IU team, you can't really be not a good quarterback. We're not Alabama where you can win a national championship with a really trash quarterback. Except for this year, you have to be good on all cylinders, at least in some aspect, and to start winning games or at least break through games. Otherwise, we're just going to keep getting 4, 5, 6 wins. But let's go on to the running backs. See what happens when you run the ball. It's a little different when you get to run the ball, and
I know, right?
It opens up the rest of the offense because even Peyton Ramsey had more of an offense passing the ball. Like he still got more 10, 15-yard passes than he usually does. It's because they had to actually try and play for the run, and they couldn't stack 7 or 8 people in the backfield to try and stop these weird plays. So it was nice for it to run the ball, but it was honestly, it was a little weird. It's like maybe we just need inclement weather for Mike DeBoard in the offensive line to let Stevie run the ball.
Apparently. I don't know. Stevie's got 26 carries, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, that's great. That's like, I don't know. I'd be happy with, my other team is University of Florida. I'd be happy with the University of Florida running back doing that.
And it wasn't even like he had like an 80-yard gain for one of them. It was his longest was an 18-yard rush.
Right.
So like you saw how consistent it was. He averaged 5.3 yards per carry, and he was actually running almost 5.3 yards a carry every single time. There was very little breakout plays and then a lot of nothing. It was a lot of he ran the ball. He got at least 3, 4, or 5 yards every single time, which is what you want. You're going to get a first down every single time. But receivers, I thought it was good with both quarterbacks, at least, to see that you completed passes to 12 different receivers. 12 different receivers caught the ball, which that's a huge narrative in the NFL. Like you see a lot of those top tier quarterbacks. It's like those top tier quarterbacks are never going to lose if they pass to 7 or 8 different receivers. And IU completed passes to 12 different guys. So it wasn't like they were keying on one guy. So really the Penn State defense had to keep their head on a swivel, and they couldn't just focus on one guy or another. So you're setting yourself up to win in that aspect. It was just like we talked about multiple other crucial mental mistakes.
We had 320 yards, 330 yards passing.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody got over 60 yards. That's great. That's fine. But 33 of which and only 3 receptions for Nick Westbrook is awful. Nick Westbrook needs to be touching the ball more than 3 times.
Yeah.
That's all.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not sure whether it's a lack of play calling for the number one receiver at a play, or a lack of him getting open to get the ball. Honestly, it's probably a combination of all of those, but it's I just don't get it. I don't know why this far into the season, why he's still not getting targeted or getting as many catches as he should be.
I don't understand why Nick Westbrook and Whop Phillier, 2 of our better playmakers on the team, aren't touching the ball more. Whop gets 4 receptions. Nick gets 3. Luke Timian gets 6. I love Luke Timian. But Luke Timian shouldn't be leading the team in receptions or touches of the ball. Like, you got to get the ball to the people that are going to be able to, break tackles and get yards and make people miss. Luke Timian's a great slot wide receiver, but he's not about to, tear off for a 40-yard touchdown run.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get the ball to people who are going to create plays, especially against a team like Penn State, where you need things to go your way. So you need to give the ball to people that are going to do something with the ball. And I don't understand the play calling yet again for Mike DeBoard.
Yeah. Make plays. Well, at least I don't understand the play calling, but it was a lot better than it has been. At least there were a lot of
there was improvement. They actually tried a trick play. God bless them. They actually tried a trick play, and it
at the
worked.
Right time. At the right time.
At the right time. And that we need to do more of that. On that 4th and 1, I'm not mad if you throw it to the end zone off a trick play, because
Yeah.
then at least you're trying something. You're throwing something new at them. Penn State tried to fake was a fake punt. They tried a fake punt, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
And it went
and
for
we
a
got them.
loss.
We never do anything like that on special teams. I think in the 4 years I've been here at IU, we've maybe done something like that once off of a fake field goal, and I don't even think it worked.
Probably not. Well, at
But
least as we saw this game, maybe our special teams shouldn't be doing anything but one job.
and I'm not saying that fake plays is the only reason why we don't beat these teams, but it's like the mentality of going after it. I'd rather
Being
lose by
aggressive.
another touchdown because we threw a pick six because we were being aggressive than what happened on the last possession of the game where we get a 10-yard penalty for holding and we're throwing it across the middle. We can't even hike the ball, and so he just throws it up and gets an interception. Like, I'd rather run some trick plays, run a hook and lateral. I don't care. Try something. Like,
We're going to come back to this a couple times, and some IU fans might not like that we're talking about this one team. But honestly, the situation in West Lafayette on Saturday evening, Purdue took it to Ohio State because they were aggressive. They took it to Ohio State. They were beating them. They were aggressive. They got up on them. They put their foot on Ohio State's throat, and they didn't let up. And they destroyed the number 2 team in the country that would have been competing for a national championship. Still could be, but they just doused the chances for Ohio State and their national championship and college playoff hopes for just being aggressive. So yeah, I'm going to echo your statement for that. But let's continue on to the defense. The one thing I had that was a little suspect, a little weird, was how there were 0 blitzes in the first half for the defense. And you can't really there's a lot of different philosophies on how you run your defense. And I'm not saying, and I'm not bashing Tom Allen for this, but it's pretty proven that you need to at least get some sort of pressure for the quarterback to make mistakes. And you really need to pressure Trace McSorley. He's a really good QB. He's a guy that I don't know if they were nervous about him trying to slide out and run the ball. Well, he did that anyway. So get pressure on him. Try and get him to make mistakes, because Trace is a good quarterback, but he makes a lot of mistakes. He'll throw a lot of picks. So I'm a little confused at why we had 0 blitzes in the first half. Maybe they just that was when it was close the entire half. So maybe they saw something was working, but otherwise they had a pretty good game. Like I mentioned before, really the defense. Yeah, technically they gave up 33 points, but really it was more like 12 points. It was really a touchdown and a couple field goals. So the defense had a pretty good game despite how they played, at least in a few recent weeks.
yeah, I thought they had a decent game. They weren't the problem at all. I did knock 7 points off a Penn State score just because you can't give the ball to Penn State with only 5 yards of field to work with and not expect them to get a touchdown.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. But if you take the 7 points off, they only let up 26 points to Penn State. And that's a really good defensive performance against a team that is better than you. So I thought the defense played fantastic. We skipped over the offensive line a little bit. Well, I'm going to roast them a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about it beforehand, but yeah, give us.
They gave up 6 sacks. I didn't realize they gave up 6 sacks with the 5 holding calls as well. Come on, you guys are supposed to be better than that.
It was kind of weird. Like, they were on or off, because they really did get a lot of push. They protected the QBs when they were on. It was just a few times that it was just really off. It was either, definitely on or off, nothing in the middle. But I think a few of those were the weird, like, scrambles where they're running and they just get tackled, like, on the line of scrimmage, where they counted as a sack. Because I know IU had 1 or 2 for Trace McSorley that were like that. It wasn't really a sack, but they tackled him right at the line of scrimmage. But still, when you have the number 6 out there, there weren't 6 times where he was running and you tackled him for barely a loss. But yep. I agree.
It's just annoying.
Yep. Is there anything as we wrap up the Penn State game, since there was a lot of good, but there was a lot of bad, and just more of the same narrative, how Indiana cannot literally ever pull it out against a top tier opponent. Is there anything that you can take away from this game that might be able to move forward? We'll even say we won't go too far. We'll just say literally move forward to this Friday, because Indiana is now a game-to-game basis. They can't look farther ahead at all.
Take what they did on offense and repeat it on Friday. Take what they did on defense and repeat it on Friday. And then completely switch up what you did on special teams and do that on Friday, and we should get a win. So
I like it, because we're about to talk about that game coming up on Friday, because yes, we have not been missing how we've been saying when we have this game. We got high school Friday night lights, not really high school, but we got Friday night lights.
Well, it might as well be high school.
Exactly, because it's kicking off at 8 p.m. I guess that's the only difference. High school kicks off at 7 versus 8, so the only difference. But yeah, Friday night lights, FS1, so Fox Sports, which is okay. I guess we got FS1. Whatever. There is a 2.5-point spread in favor of IU right now, which is really interesting, because if you look at some of the other projections, like the ESPN matchup predictor, they have 57.6% in Minnesota's favor. So really, when you see those kinds of stats and you see a 2.5-point spread, whether it's like a win or a loss, basically, it's just these two teams are solid. They're both basically the same team. They just giving it to home field advantage. Or Indiana, they think Indiana is just very, 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 very slightly ahead, since they have the spread in their favor. But really, it's just a coin toss for at least how these people are predicting it. But in Minnesota's their resume, they have beaten New Mexico State, Fresno, and Miami of Ohio. But they have now lost their 4th straight game. Started with Maryland, then they lost to Iowa, then Ohio State, and most recently, this is the big one, they got blown out by Nebraska this previous weekend for the Cornhuskers' first win, not just first Big Ten win, first win of the entire season, and they lost to Nebraska 53-28. So, what have you seen, before we get into little specifics, Matt? What have you seen from Minnesota from their very up and down performances?
They like to give up a lot of points on defense. I give up a lot of yards on defense. So that's good for the IU offense. Problem is, they also like to score a bunch on offense. But here's the thing for Minnesota. Their starting QB, who's a freshman walk-on, by the way, Alex Annexted, left the Nebraska game injured, something internally. And I've been looking around. There's not really any information online as of Tuesday night whether he's going to be playing on Friday or not. So I guess it'll probably be a game time thing when they release that. You know, football teams like to be very secretive about about their injuries. And yes, as they should be. So we're pretty much looking like, if Minnesota doesn't play their starting quarterback, this should be a runaway victory for IU. If they do play the starting quarterback, it's going to be a high-scoring game, and that makes me extremely nervous, but we'll see.
Yeah, here's a little, well, speaking of the QBs, which is a great segue, let's talk a little bit about Zach Annexstad. If he's the guy that gets the go, again, like Matt said Tuesday evening, we don't have any information if he's going to be a go or not, so we'll talk a little bit about both, but he's got a 51.9% completion percentage. He's completing an average of about 14 passes for 26 attempts per game, so not really a lot, but not too little. He's got a total of 1,277 yards total of passing for the entire year. When here's a little bit of a reference point, Ramsey's got 1,860. Really, Zach has the 4th least passing yards in the Big Ten for a starting QB. So yes, it might be a little bit of a high-scoring game, but he's not the best of quarterbacks. 4th least passing yards in the Big Ten. Illinois, Rutgers, and Maryland are really the only ones that are worse. And Illinois right now is doing a 2 QB system because they don't know what they're doing right now. Rutgers is Rutgers. I don't even think we need to talk about the Rutgers QB situation, because I think Rutgers versus Maryland is the funniest stat in the world. And then Maryland, they really like to run the ball. And I mean, they really like to run the ball to the tune of twice the amount of yards that they pass for. They've only passed for about 700, 750 yards, and they've ran the ball for over 1,500 yards. So rough comparison. Really, Zach's at the bottom of the competitive Big Ten quarterbacks. He's got 9 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. And lastly, before we talk about the potential backup QB, he's got this. He does not run the ball whatsoever. Officially, he's tried to run the ball 23 times for a total of negative 89 yards. Now, of course, that's getting sacked where he scrambles out and they count it as an attempt to run and they count it as a sack. But you can tell that he doesn't even really get past the line of scrimmage whatsoever if he has a total of negative 89 yards of running. A little bit about Tanner Morgan, the backup QB that came in for Zach. Honestly, there's not much, and I mean a little bit. Just if you look at his stats from last game, 11 for 16, 214 yards, 1 interception. Not great. Didn't throw a TD, threw an interception, but his completion percentage was pretty good. Threw for over 200 yards. Not much there. Not the best, but again, IU has played subpar quarterbacks and gotten beat by these subpar quarterbacks. Let's go into the running game. Really, there are 2 guys. They've got a 1-2 punch with Mohamed Ibrahim and Bryce Williams. Both of them have carried upper 80s, both for about a total of 800 yards between the both of them. So really, they're both averaging over 100 rushing yards per game. So this is more of their strong suit. They really do almost literally split the carries between both of them evenly. I think it's like 88 and 86 for a total of 800 yards. So they're very close together. Ibrahim has 3 rushing touchdowns. William is 1, so they don't rush for a lot of touchdowns. But another weird statistic, the Seth Green. So he has only carried the ball for 38 times for a total of 130 yards, but he has 6 rushing touchdowns. This is really weird because technically on the roster, he's a receiver, but he also plays QB, which are you starting to hear some similarities between Indiana and Minnesota right here? He's only caught 1 ball as a wide receiver, but he's ran the ball for 38 times and attempted 3 passes. So if you weren't catching my drift, it sounds a little bit like Reese Taylor for Minnesota. He runs the ball. He catches the ball, well, a little bit. He's probably going to be one of the backup QBs if Zach is out, since he played QB in high school. So just a little bit. Have you seen anything from the running game, or is that basically it, Matt?
That's basically it. Yeah, you covered that pretty well.
Yeah. So Seth Green, you'll see him all over the field. Receivers, Tyler Johnson, that's basically it, almost literally. 705 pass receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, averaging basically about 100 yards and a touchdown per game. Really, Rashad Bateman is the only other guy who does anything. And when I'm using the word literally, they have only 3 receivers who have more than 4 catches. That's it. 3 receivers who have caught the ball more than 4 times this entire season. Only 4 tight end catches the entire season as well. So literally these tight ends do nothing in terms of receiving, at least for IU. So in terms of IU, that's good news because as we saw against Iowa, these big catching and passing and blocking tight ends did not play over well for the Indiana defense. Offense, 5 fumbles, 10 interceptions. So they're turning the ball over pretty regularly. They had 4 picks against Iowa, which is good for this defense.
My goodness.
Yeah. So, and again, these are either quarterback. It was both of them that threw picks against Iowa. So, anything to wrap up the offense more? It's just it's a lot of meh, but as we've seen, at least recently, and especially for Indiana on the road, a lot of meh doesn't mean that Indiana is going to do well.
That's right. If Alex Annexstad is not starting, this should be an easier game than Rutgers. If Alex Annexstad is starting, this is going to be a harder game than Rutgers. So there you go. There's my summary of what we just talked about.
There's your huge analytical,
you know what?
Credentialed analysis right there.
I do put on my resume that I worked with some analytics once. So you know what? There it is. There's You just noticed all of my experience. No, I don't actually put that on my resume. So that was a lie.
But again, it is something to mention that IU's on the road, which, what was it? Something like they've only won 7 of 31 recent road games in the Big Ten, and they've only come to Rutgers, who's been in the Big Ten for 5 years. Maryland was like one of them, and again, they've only been in the Big Ten for 5 years. And Purdue. Was that it? I think that was it.
I think Nebraska was
maybe Nebraska once when they were not good, but which is also another interesting thing. TCF Bank Stadium was opened recently ish, and IU has not been there yet. So interesting that we've not been to Minnesota quite recently. But let's talk quickly about the defense. Not a terrible defense. Again, it's not great, it's not bad, but really they've got a couple really good players that really center around the linebackers. And that's basically all of what their defense is. But linebacker Blake Cashman has 58 total tackles. So he's averaging 8.3 tackles per game, which is a lot. It's not quite as much as we've seen at people at the very top of the league, but 8.3 tackles per game. He gets around. Linebacker Barbara Thomas and DB Jacob Huff is also averaging about 7 tackles per game. Then you've got linebacker Carter Coughlin. He's tied for 7th in the nation with 8 total sacks. So if the offensive line plays like they did against Penn State, then Carter Coughlin is going to have his way with Peyton Ramsey getting sacked in the backfield. But he has 8 of Minnesota's 13 total sacks. So really, it's just Carter that gets sacks and not much push from their D-line. In short, like I said, they have good linebackers, and that's most of their defense. They've gotten 4 fumble recoveries, 5 interceptions, so about an average of 1.5 to 2 kind of turnovers a game. Not stellar, but not nothing. Any takeaways from the defense?
Yeah, they're just average, basically. They, like you said, they got some playmakers in the linebacker, so they're going to try to focus on stopping the run. But you can take advantage of the fact that their pass rush isn't the best, and that their secondary protection also isn't the best. So
just don't throw it in the middle of the field; you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yep.
Exactly. Yep. That's pretty much it for Minnesota. I'd like to say that this would be a pretty easy game for Indiana, and that the way Minnesota's been playing recently, how they haven't won a Big Ten game, how it shouldn't be much of a question, and it would be more like our Rutgers podcast that we just kind of make fun of the other team almost, to where it should be an easy game. But we of course can't say that again this year. And also, that speaking of Minnesota not getting a Big Ten win, what do you think Minnesota is thinking right now? We're playing India to get our first win against an opponent that we can actually beat. But let's get into some questions. We have a bunch of questions this week from you guys. So thanks for sending in a bunch of your questions. So we're just going to dive right into most of these Indiana football related questions. And a lot of you probably can even infer what they are. But let's start with a question from Ben on Twitter. What would have been sadder? And I'm going to read these word for word. What would have been sadder, the actual result of the Penn State game, or an upset in front of less than 100 IU fans and 25-ish students rushing the field? He put at the end, the fans got to stay, and I'm getting tired of them leaving. Yes and no. Ben. Yes and no. If you have been an IU football fan for 1 or 2 years, I see your sentiment. If you have been a football for 3 or 4 or 50 years, it's the same narrative. When does IU really actually get to beat these top level opponents? They always come close. They always lose. They always come close. They always lose. The key word is that they always lose. What do you want them to stay for? If Indiana cannot ever show that they even can come back into the game or beat these teams, what are they going to stay for? It's cold out. The temperature dropped, they said, almost 20 degrees from the kickoff to the end of the game. And if they would have stayed, the narrative was going to stay the same regardless. If these fans would have stayed another 10 or 15 minutes, there's just nothing to stay for, in my opinion. And even if I was there, I don't know. I'm usually someone that would stay to the end, but really, especially if you're down 12 after committing a lot of those mental mistakes, it's not even like you're getting out pushed or out athleted. Um, I don't know. Matt, you're probably more in that the fans should stay, and yeah, they should stay. But like, there's nothing that Indiana's giving them for them to
I
even want to stay.
I don't blame them for leaving. Even the trash left the stands after halftime.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's I don't blame them. Like we're not getting results. Uh, and recent history has shown us that they're not gonna get the result. If you take out that Michigan State win from 2 years ago, but even that, like they
Yep.
were just a terrible team that year. So like,
Mhm.
it's just frustrating.
5 years ago when Indiana got probably their best win in maybe a decade or so. I'd have to go back when they played Mizzou, but that was on the road too. So it's not even like they can show that they can win in their own stadium. So
Right.
again, yeah, I agree with Matt. I don't blame them. It would be nice if Indiana could try and win, because what else are you going to do? There at some point, there's only so much fans in the seats can do, and it's got to start with the playing on the field. So I guarantee, like, the atmosphere before games is incredible, especially for how Indiana football plays. The people are excited about Indiana football, regardless, even with like a 4 or 5, 6 win season. For most of the games, people are out beforehand. It's just the actual football itself is not actually a great product. So literally, if you just get one big win, I guarantee the next game is going to be very different for how many people stay there and how many people will show up and stay till the very end of the game, which, by the way, the last 3 or 4 years have been immensely better than 5, 6, 7 years ago. So if you think that was bad, it actually did get worse. But let's go into the next question from JJ on Twitter. Is the coaching staff in over their heads? Matt, why don't you take this one first?
No, this coaching staff is right where they need to be. I think they're.
Mostly.
Okay, mostly except for the offensive coordinator. Everybody else is fine. I think defense is great and always improving. We have a fantastic class coming in, and we have a fantastic class that just redshirted. Like, they're recruiting well. We're getting good players. Like, we should be in the 30 to 40 to 50 range in the college football rankings. Fairly soon with the classes that we're getting and the players that we're getting. We're getting prospects for you. We're flipping prospects from Ohio State to IU. Like, the coaching staff recruiting is great. The games and the wins you have to expect will come with Tom Allen. He's only been here. This is his second second full year. So like,
as the head coach.
As the head coach, yeah, you gotta give him some time. How much time you give him, now that's up to whether or not he starts getting a bunch of losing seasons, right? Like, if we're in year 4 and he's gone 4-8, 5-7, or he went 5-7 last year and let's say he goes 5-7 this year and goes 5-7 next year and goes 4-8 the year after.
There's no going up. It's just stagnant or down.
Right. If it's stagnant or down, I think it's time to pull the plug. Be like, you're a great defensive coordinator, you're a great person, but we're going to look elsewhere. But after 2 years, and we're not even through his second year yet, say, is the coaching staff over their head? And we're getting results in the recruiting. I think it's a little bit too early. The fans like to jump on it and be like, we should throw the bank at Nick Saban and buy him out of Alabama. Which, first off, no, he's not coming to IU, and he's never leaving Alabama. And second off, I don't think we can even throw money. We can come up with enough money to throw at a top coach. Like, we have to get somebody like Minnesota got and PJ Fleck, or Purdue guy, and Jeff Brom, somebody who's gotten results at a smaller program than us, which I know is surprising that there's smaller programs than IU football, but smaller programs than us, and have gotten results and gotten recruiting results and bring them up to the Big Ten level. Somebody with a unique style, somebody who has a unique personality. You need that in a coach. Tom Allen's a unique personality. He has a unique style of defense.
Mm-hmm.
So he has those two set out. He has Mike DeBoer as offensive coordinator. That's his first mistake. And I think we'll see at the end of the year whether Mike DeBoer stays or the play calling duty goes to somebody else. And Mike DeBoer stays the offensive coordinator because I like Mike DeBoer's offense. I don't like Mike DeBoer's play calling. But we'll see at the end of the year what he does in the offensive end, because the offensive end is lagging behind the defense. I think the defense is much better than the offense is. And I think with a QB that fits Mike DeBoer's system, it might be better. So I think, to sum up my long spiel, it's too quick to go, are they in over their heads? Because I think we're getting results in two out of the three facets. The team's getting better. We're playing a lot better. And because you can't argue that we're not playing better, because we're just playing better football. And then secondly, we're getting recruiting. And we're getting like really good recruits, like the best recruits IU has ever gotten. And so the results just have to come in the field. And half of these guys aren't even Tom Allen's guys yet. Like, you got to give him till he gets his guys, right? Like we said the same thing with Archie Miller last year in basketball. These aren't his guys. These are Tom Crean's guys. Like, wait till he implements his system with the people that he's chosen to come in. And then we'll see. If the results start going down, then it's like, yeah, he's over his head. We need to pull the plug. But we'll see.
We should fire Mike DeBoer and hire Kevin Wilson as offensive coordinator.
No.
No. Yeah, I agree. It's at this point, we're not going to make a coaching change. We're in it with Tom Allen for the foreseeable future, whether you like it or not. Now, whether other coordinators will change or not, that's something to be said for later. But we're in it. We're either in it to win it or in it to lose it with Tom Allen.
And it's not like we throw enough money at the football program anyways that we can go and get a better coach. Like, of the Big Ten, I think we pay the smallest salary, if not like the bottom three of the smallest salary for football. Like, if we want a good football team, we gotta pay the head coaches. We gotta pay the assistant coaches. Like, we have to throw money at the program. And so with the money that we have and that we're spending, I think Tom Allen is currently our best bet.
Yeah. And which, before we get into the next question, because it's very similar, the coaching, like I said, coaching system is not going to change. I don't think they're necessarily in over their heads. I'm going to steal this from Galen Clavio, one of the hosts of Crimson Cast, who we had on 2 weeks ago, by the way, and that was great. But I'm going to steal this from him. I honestly agree with his sentiment. He said how Indiana is the 5 football program to be the coach of, because the recent history in Indiana, if you look at their football record over even 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, 60 years, except for a couple spurts, they have been terrible. They just don't ever have a track record of doing well. They never ever get push from either the school or just anyone to try and become a coach of. So I'm going to move on to Duncan's question is, does this influence your opinion on Tom Allen? Is he still the coach for us? He just said that his question was answered and no need to respond in the chat, but does this influence your opinion on Tom Allen? Yes or no?
No, because if you looked at the schedule before the year, you already marked this game as a loss, and we played them close. I mean, that's all you can ask for. Now, if any game that changed my opinion of Tom Allen, I think it was the Iowa game, which we marked as well, they're usually a good program, but we might be able to play them closely. And if we had played them close, then I would feel a lot better about Tom Allen. But we didn't. We got blown out. And that's why I started questioning him. He came back this game much more prepared, and we had a close results, except for the special teams deciding to mess things up. I am surprised that the special teams coordinator still has a job after last week, but
it's been like special teams is yes or no, basically. Let's get into the last couple questions because they relate to each other pretty similarly. But let's start with Rob's question from Twitter. Realistically, what is the best case scenario for the remainder of the IU football season? And I'm also going to throw in Dakota's questions. We can make it a little more specific. Thoughts on Penix's injury, which we can start with that. But then can Ramsey lead us to a bowl?
Lamsey.
So thoughts on Penix, Matt, and then can Ramsey lead us to a bowl, and how will the end of the season realistically, or best case scenario, show itself?
Thoughts on Penix, I think it's devastating for him. ACL injury is not good to have on your resume, especially for somebody who's probably wanting to go to the NFL someday. He's good enough probably as a prospect to do that. So that sucks for him, and I feel really bad. But he'll be back for the spring, and he'll be back, and he'll probably play next year. So it's not the end of the world.
You sure you don't want to use a medical red shirt and the school all these red shirts on him just to keep saving him?
I mean, hey, I'm down. You can
No, we're not. I'm not down for that. We'll play him next year, please.
I mean, I hope so, but if they're not going to play him next year, you might as well use a red shirt on him as well.
Yeah, we never.
But anyways, that's besides the fact. Yes, Ramsey can lead us to a bowl game, I think. Especially, it all depends on this weekend if Minnesota's quarterback is out. If he's out, then I think we almost we absolutely should win this game if they don't have their starting quarterback. And they're not that good of a team anyways. So we should beat them, 1, and then 2, we should beat Maryland, which brings me into Rob's question, which is what's the reasonable outcome? And I think it's 2 wins. Are like the most positive outlooking. What was the question?
Best case scenario.
Best case scenario, 2 wins. Best case scenario is 2 wins. We win. Alex is out for Minnesota on Friday. We win. We get the bye week. We go in. We play Maryland. No, we play Michigan first.
We have a bye, then we do Michigan.
Okay, we get a bye. We keep the game in Michigan close. Then we keep the confidence of playing Michigan close in Ann Arbor like we always do. And then we go into the Maryland game. We win the Maryland game, and then we get our butts kicked by Purdue, but we're still 6-6, and we go to a bowl game. So,
well, I mean, if you want to talk about, it's by then Maryland, then Michigan. So just flip those. By Maryland, Michigan. Okay. If you want to talk about best case scenario, I mean, really best case scenario, you still can get 7 wins. You go 3-1 the rest of the season because if IU plays how they should and they don't play inconsistent, they have the ability to beat Minnesota, Maryland, and Purdue, even with Purdue doing well. Like they have the ability to. Now that's the best case scenario. That's not the scenario that I think is going to happen. I think the realistic scenario is 1 or 2 wins. Hopefully we really get to that 2 wins so we can get a bowl game. I think that's, yes, for Dakota's question, yes, Ramsey can lead us to a bowl. Most definitely. Can he get us to 7 wins? I think it caps off Ramsey getting to 7 wins. So I think 6-6 with him is probably the ceiling for this team this year. Probably losing the bowl game. It depends on who we play, but it's just the way it goes. And I really hope that he can prove us wrong, but it's just been, there hasn't been much change there's been a lot of average and a lot of not so good. We haven't seen spurts of really, really good IU football, to even show that we're capable of it. It's just really just an average 6-6 season. So, I think that's the best case. I mean, best case is 7-5. I think best case / realistic is really 6-6. Hopefully we don't go 5-7, and I really hope we don't lose out because that is very much a possibility still. Don't think that losing out is not out of the question. Hopefully we don't. But again, Penix's injury, we've said it. It's devastating. It's awful. We really feel bad for the kid. He was getting in, and I really wish he probably would have been able to come in and play a lot more in upcoming games. I think Tom Allen and Mike DeBoer would have really had to sit down and talk, and the QB coaches and all of them would have had to talk if they want to burn the red shirt now, and I think they might have done that. But now they get to cover their butts and say like, oh, well, he's injured, so we now have to redshirt him. So it's just sad.
Thought came to my head about the Tom Allen questions and if we're in over our head or whatnot. Look at that bye week and then into Maryland. So let's say we win against Minnesota on Friday, and then we go into the bye week and we play Maryland. If we get out coached by Maryland off of our bye week, then there's cause for concern. And then we go, is he over his head? And we go, well, actually, maybe he might be. He might just be like a really fantastic coordinator with like an impossibly likable, not impossibly likable. That's a weird thing to say. A very likable personality. Why I say impossibly likable? Impressively likable personality. But yeah, so then we go, okay, this might be a problem. But if there's like some personal mistakes and that's why we lose to Maryland, then like it's out of his hands.
Yep.
But I feel like with a bye week, that Maryland game should be a winnable game.
Yep. You know, and honestly, to wrap this up, my thoughts on Penix's injury is that Reese Taylor is now the backup QB. That's where we're going to leave it off on. So I really hope I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll leave it to your imagination. So that about wraps it up for our 59th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you all so much for joining us, whether it was live on YouTube or in a podcast later. Stay tuned through updates on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as visit our website, thehoosiersound.com, so you can find all of our information regarding our podcasts all in one place. As always, send us your questions as the audience. So be sure to comment, chat, or send us a message at contact@thehoosiersound.com and what questions you have, and we'll get them on our next episode. Lastly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. It really helps so that we can grow this podcast. And if you're still listening, I'm going to tease next week. We have a very big, very major announcement that we are going to make next week. So if you're listening all the way at the end after we've talked through all of our outro stuff, we have a big announcement. So stay tuned for that. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.